Welcome to the Podium Pod, the Pick and Rolls National Basketball Podcast as we continue through the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. I'm Adam Webster and I'm joined today by Pick and Roll feature writer Ben Mallis. Ben, firstly, welcome to the Podium Pod.
Adam, nice to be with you. This is going to be fun.
Fun is definitely, you and I have very different definitions of the word fun. Also joining us from Low Man Help is Marc Campbell. Marc, you've been with us the whole way along, and as always, you're the least stressed one out of the three of us on these post-game streams because you don't really need the Boomers to outperform what we expect. But it would be nice if we had a few more of these podcasts to come.
Yeah, that'd be great. We've really enjoyed getting to know each other. So, bring us home, get us a couple more actions here.
Andrew Nemhard, please save us. Please save us tonight.
I feel like I've ruined the bromance here. I come on, you two guys are on a good run, and then I'm the kiss of death.
It's very good to have you, Ben Mallis, because you are not backwards in coming forwards, and that's what we need in this show. Australia has lost their third group game of the 2024 Paris Olympics to Greece, 77-71 for Greece. Giannis Antetokounmpo had 20 points on 8 of 11 shooting. He added 7 rebounds and 6 assists. Thomas Walkup had 18 points. He shot 4 3-pointers. He had 3 rebounds and 3 assists as well. So those were the stars for the Greeks. Nick Kalathis had 7 points and 8 assists. So usually he's the playmaker, and he was, but we were all a bit flat. I said to you before I jumped on, I've got to increase my energy level because my energy level is sapped from imploring the Boomers, begging the Boomers to do something in that second half, to do something a little bit differently, to be able to get back in the game. Now, they were able to get back in the game, and Ben, I'll start with you. The Boomers got to within that 2 points, looked like potentially tying or taking the lead, but just could not get over the hump, and they dug themselves too big of a hole early to be able to overcome.
Yeah, correct. And as I'm sure Marc will go into with his expertise, there are some clear schematic reasons for that in my eyes, but I think the more pertinent issue right now is me stepping back, and this is just bringing deja vu from the World Cup 12 months ago, that when the games mattered most and the team needed to win, because yes, they're still probably going to make it through to the next round, but that was not a good showing. That was a poor performance. They didn't show up. They were down 19 points in the second half to a Greek team that's got Giannis and a bunch of role players, let's be honest, compared with the Boomers' level of talent. And yeah, they dug themselves out of that hole somewhat, and massive credit to Delhi. I thought he came in and really injected some energy. But the credit to him is an indictment to what came before him, because the team was flat. They looked disorganized. And even in the last couple of minutes for mine, I think that really crystallized it again, where a close loss wasn't the worst thing in the world, but they're jacking up shots and pushing the tempo. And if that last 3 goes in, then Greece jumps them and it becomes catastrophic. So for mine, that just puts a point on how just disorganized and poor this showing was, because there's no getting around the fact that right now this doesn't look like a medal-winning team, and a short-lived comeback in the second half doesn't change that for Melbourne.
Marc, it was a highly disappointing performance by the Boomers across the contest. We discussed the game as the game was going on, which I found very cathartic. So thank you for adding some analysis across the game. But there were 2 things that we kept coming back to. One of them was free throws. That's very, very simple for Australia. They went to the line a total of 21 times. They made 10 of those shots. They made less than 50% of their free throws, and they lost by 6 points. You make 70, 80% of your free throws, all of a sudden you've won the game, or you're very, very close to winning the contest. The other one was turnovers and points off turnovers. You and I spoke about this in the pre-Olympics special about the assist to turnover ratio and how you can live with some turnovers, but not others. There's a quote that you've used in our conversations about turnovers. I want you to tell our viewers and listeners about that and about what types of turnovers are better than others and why the turnovers from the Boomers tonight were so damning.
Yeah. The quote is from Dean Smith, legendary Carolina basketball coach. And he used to say that every turnover is caused by one of 2 things: selfishness or carelessness. And you saw both of those on display tonight for the Boomers, whether it was passing up an easy, simple play to force one somewhere else, whether it was driving into traffic like Reith with no plan and just throwing the ball carelessly somewhere. And what those turnovers do is they create these advantage actions where a team like Greece that doesn't have shooting is able to get out in space. And they're able to get the best player in the world in space, Antetokounmpo, out there in acres of space against you, which is the scariest thing ever. And early in the game, the Boomers turn the ball over constantly in a live ball situation where you don't get to have the other team take the ball out and set your defense, and you're just in space at a disadvantage. And within the first 10 to 12 minutes, they had 7 live ball turnovers, had given up 14 points off of them, given Greece confidence, and really put themselves in a detrimental hole. And it's not like these things weren't, showing in the build-up games or showing in the first games. Like, these are their warts. They have warts. Every team has warts, but you have to have self-awareness of what they are, and you have to know, how much they can hurt you. And it seems like this Boomers team, from the turnovers to other actions, they have had a lack of self-awareness. They have not improved game to game in these wart areas for them, and turnovers has been the most glaring one, and it really bit them tonight.
It was a 6-point margin. So you can point to any one of these statistics and see where 6 points could have come from. Points off turnovers, 20 to 12, so +8. Free throws, as we say, they missed 11 free throws tonight as a team. You look at those stats, you look at the way that they played across the first half, Ben, there was almost no coming back. And it's surprising that they were able to get back to the brink of a victory with just how poorly they executed in that first half. Everything was falling apart. Marc and I have spoken about it at length. The role enthusiasm, role acceptance was wilting, and players were just not accepting what they needed to do to help the team win. And instead, they were just trying to do it all themselves, or just making the wrong decision. And it's an indictment on the ability of this team to connect and to trust that the process that they have in place and the system they have in place is going to work.
Yeah, and I think we need to be careful saying they got it back to a 6-point margin and pretending that means much, because again, for all the cliches we know about basketball, like, it's hard to blow teams out. Yeah. And I think you have to look at the talent disparity between the two teams. It shouldn't be a 19-point hole to this Greek team. And I think you're right, Adam, that there's lots of things, but that first half, you guys touched on the turnovers, and I think it was 15 points going the other way in the first half. The free throws that were missed, even that first quarter, we had a couple of 3 balls go in, and Giddy got bailed out with that 3-point shot at the buzzer. But I think we scored 24 points in the first quarter, and half of them were at the 3-point line. And then in the second quarter, it just all dried up offensively. And we saw the Greek team build momentum. And again, I hate cliches, but sometimes they apply that a lesser team was given the momentum of a better team in Australia helping them out in the second quarter. That Greek team got energy. They were running. They were shooting threes. They were getting offensive rebounds. And yeah, Greece was able to hold on and win the game. And that's not surprising. And again, I think as well, diving a little bit further on what Marc was saying, it has to speak to coaching somewhat, because it's a bit of an indictment that those turnovers are coming, and the improvement Marc speaks of, or the lack thereof. I would say it goes beyond just this 2-month period and flashes back to what we saw last year at the World Cup, that I'd argue over that 15-month period, what has actually improved on the offensive end with these players playing together? I would say not much. Yes, they're getting some more experience, and yes, there is some youth in that team. But when you put it all together, I don't think this is a better offensive team than what it was 15 months ago. And that's ultimately why we're standing here asking these questions and thinking how much longer this campaign is going to go.
We really appreciate all the comments that are coming through on YouTube Live. We appreciate everyone tuning in live late on this Friday evening. Hopefully you don't have to work in the morning and you can stay with us throughout this episode. A lot of commentary about Josh Giddey, a lot of commentary about Patty Mills. Marc, we spoke at length about Patty Mills and when he's effective and when he's less effective. And we saw sort of the best and the not so good of Patty in this contest, where he was able to be really effective early on in not stacking actions, as you say. And when he got that confidence, it was almost a really bad thing for the Boomers to be able to get that confidence. He started to try and cook, and at this point, unfortunately, he can only cook like a toasted cheese sandwich, whereas in Tokyo, he was cooking like a really beautiful risotto or something. It's not going all that well, and he just needs to, let go and surrender. Also, a lot of comments about Josh Giddey and Paddy Mills on the floor at the same time, not really working and needing to stagger that. And it was in the second half where that did present itself as an opportunity for the Boomers, and Brian Goorjian did get Matthew Dellavedova out there, and they were able to stagger their lineups a little bit more and take more advantage of better personnel on the floor and more matching personnel on the floor. Sometimes your best 5 players aren't the 5 players that should be out there.
Yeah, I can cook on this. I'll touch on all that. I think it's not so much about them playing together, it's what they're doing while they're out there. And to me, if you think about Paddy, everything we've seen from Paddy in the build-up, in the warm-up games, in these games, if there's actions where there's 10 eyes on Paddy and he's handling the ball, it never results in a good thing. He's 0 for 6 or 0 for 7 in the half court trying to finish. He can't finish at the rim. And if you can't finish at the rim, you can't be a guy that handles the ball with 10 eyes on you, because you're not going to be able to have the first option of actually getting downhill and finishing and putting fear in anybody. And to me, his best actions are the best actions for any type of high-level shooter. You have so much attention on you, and there's so much attention for you not to get the ball. The best thing you can do is set back screens. And that's either going to get wide open layups like we saw for Nick Kay, or if there's help, it's going to give you a chance to be a step ahead, to come off a down screen, to pop out and get it. And it's so much about, that's the same thing over and over and over. The same work we've seen from China game 1 to Greece now. It's the same exact thing. And the reason that they're allowing Paddy to continue to do this, it's on the coaching staff and it's also on Paddy. You have to have some self-awareness here of what's going on. You have to understand what's good for the team, what's good for you. And it's just unbelievable that they haven't been able to rein this in and to get better actions, because there are good actions from Paddy. There's really, really good actions, but they won't lean into them. They won't lean out of the bad ones. And I don't understand it.
Ben, I want to touch on Josh Green and Matisse Thybulle, because there's a lot of narratives going on social media right now, and a lot of revisionist history of people saying, in the wake of these performances, that you have to review selection and you have to review the non-selection of Matisse Thybulle. It's been done to death. It's been covered in every single basketball media forum in Australia and also internationally to some extent. There were some scuttlebutt stories that emerged on Code Sports this week about players pulling rank and getting Matisse moved away from the team, unsubstantiated stuff and sort of somewhat corroborated stuff. It was a little bit murky. We can't really reference anything specific from that other than scuttlebutt, but it's interesting to me that immediately the answer is, well, Matisse Thybulle would have solved all of these problems. I mean, we saw what potentially Matisse Thybulle would have done out there tonight with what Josh Green did out there tonight and in the last game. I mean, there's a comment here from one of the commenters around Josh Green doing his best Thybulle impersonation and hitting the side of the backboard. I mean, I played with a guy in high school. I played with a guy in high school that hit the side of the backboard, but I think he might have been smoking something outside before the game. It's not something.
It's that Tasmanian implication, Adam.
Too often, yeah. Look, it was a different time in 2001 than in Tasmania, that's for sure. It was the wild south. But I don't think Matisse is the answer here. Matisse isn't the silver bullet this team was looking for, right?
No. Well, look, I agree with that. And I'll be honest, 3 weeks ago, I thought that Matisse and Cook should have been on the team and someone like Delly shouldn't have been. But look, tonight, Delly was the one that came in and changed the game as much as it could be changed. But you're right. If we're relying on Matisse Thybulle or Xavier Cooks or Matthew Dellavedova or Dewalt Reith to win us games, we're cooked anyway. And I think that's missing the point of the discussion. Yep. The point of the discussion is what Marc was getting at, that the best 5 or 6 players on this team that we all know haven't performed tonight. And we can go into the reasons for that. And I think it is schematic, it is coaching. And it's really one of those things where the coach is going to step away after this campaign, and Gordon's been an absolute hero of the campaign for the past 30 years. But if we're looking at this past 15 months, I keep harping on in isolation, I think some sane minds can look at that and say this team hasn't performed to its optimum, because you look at someone like Paddy Mills, he's trying to do his best Paddy Mills from 2021 impersonation, but the guy just can't do it anymore. And that's no shade at Paddy. He's the greatest boomer we've ever had. He's done it for so long. He scored 40 points to win us a medal 3 years ago. Like, he is minted. Yeah. He has done everything he can. But as his career has slipped back, as has Ingles and as has Delhi, there hasn't been the elevation around them from the coaching staff to boost the team, from the secondary players to boost themselves up at a time where all of that is needed to carry the load. And to Marc's point, Delhi and Joe are still on this team, and obviously Paddy is still doing his best, but we can't rely on those guys anymore. They're in their 30s. They're fringe NBA players at best. Well, they're not even that. So, like, these guys aren't going to be leading us to Olympic medals anymore. It's on the collective universe of the team and the coaching staff and the administration around them to put them in position to be role players and complement the young stars. And just simply put, that hasn't happened. So, no, I don't think talking about Thibault or Cooks or the three of us playing on this team would change anything from what we've seen tonight.
Marc,
I have to ride for Gorge a little bit here. Because Gorge, Landell, and Dyson were incredible in the second half and throughout. And so there's certain things that I think you could probably harp on Gorge, but like, he did something in the second half where they started going almost exclusive empty corner pick and rolls. They were getting anything they wanted out of it. They schematically moved the game around to do things. And Gorge isn't missing free throws. He didn't go 10 for 21. He didn't throw hit ahead passes that shouldn't be thrown. He didn't not pull guys out when they did that. Live ball stuff isn't on him. Like, he can coach those things through. And I guarantee you, he is showing them the film. There are film sessions where he's ripping into guys, but he also, Matisse isn't the answer. Cooks isn't the answer. Like, the guys that he has to play better. They have to play better. They have to stop making the same mistakes. And it's not on him to make free throws, to not throw live ball turnovers, and to not selfishly, or carelessly play the game of basketball.
For those of us without a diploma in X's and O's, Marc, empty corner pick and roll, can you just talk me through what that is and why that worked?
Yeah, so empty corner pick and roll is, imagine the corners of the basketball court, and there's no offensive player in that corner, and you're going away from that corner. So when you're going away from the ball screen, the backside is where low man help or second tag help comes from. And so by going empty corner and Greece playing up at the level with their both defenders, they were able to get a roller back behind with no help side coming from a long ways away. And so they were able to get layups,
right?
Yeah, they were able to get layups. They were able to get switches. They were able to get attacks on the other side, skip passes. Patty got a catch and one dribble pull up from an advantage. They got actions where Patty was able to set a back screen and a layup for Nick Kay. And I think schematically, Gorge did a great job of getting them in way more of those actions. And maybe he wanted to get in them from the start. We'll have no clue, because Josh Giddey, Nick Kay, you name it, everybody was throwing the ball everywhere, and it was just open space for Greece to start with. So, he's not throwing those turnovers. He's not missing those free throws, but he did put them in great actions, and schematically they made wonderful adjustments to get themselves back in the game.
A wonderful adjustment you can make is to go with Team Feet. The Podium Pod is brought to you by Team Feet. Team Feet offers premium athletic socks for modern teams, however they compete, with sweat wicking cotton, arch support, ventilation panels, and compression stitching. Team Feet socks are built to outperform, whether your team is tiny or 1,000 strong. Team Feet unites and excites your players and supporters with their combination of quality and performance. Join basketball teams around Australia and the world by choosing Team Feet. For designs and worldwide delivery, head to teamfeet.com. Gentlemen, I want to talk about the young guards, because Josh Giddey was given the keys to this franchise, for lack of a better term, this program. But I want to put to you firstly, Ben, that we saw across this tournament, across these last 3 games, if these were indeed the only 3 games these Boomers play, that there was another 6'7" recent draftee that is probably in a better position on both ends to be able to be the guiding principle, the lightning rod, the personality of this national team. And that man is Dyson Daniels. He played through, a tough knee complaint today. He hit shots from outside. He defended hard the whole tournament. I think we need to talk about the fact that the best player, the best young player that this program has moving forward may not actually be Josh Giddey.
Yeah, look, and I think Marc nailed certain aspects of what he said before, that I agree that Daniels and Landale have been the best two players of this campaign. And when things turned around in the second half, they were the two guys. We were mentioning on our group chat that in the first half, every time the ball went through Landale, to pivot this discussion a little bit at him, the offense looked really good and things played well. And offensively for Daniels, he is a great 3-and-D role player that's turbocharging his career up. And you can see aspects of a game that can be more sophisticated than that, attacking off a hard closeout and some dribble drive penetration that is coming into his game. So I agree that he has been the shining light with Landale over the past 3 weeks and the 3 games we've played here in the warm-up period, because I think we're seeing him not just in a Boomers setup, but I'm thinking this probably is going to extend into his career in Atlanta
100%.
when he gets back there, that he's starting to experiment and find the outer regions of his game. And it's interesting to contrast him with Giddey in the sense that Giddey needs the ball to be effective, whereas Dyson doesn't. And then when Dyson gets the ball, his effectiveness can scale up as his skill set develops. So, yeah, I think he had a really good game, as much as anyone could tonight. And interestingly enough, I've just seen a quote from our friend Kane Pittman, who was in Paris, and he was basically saying that Gorge is saying that the problem was the offense in the first half and that the offense torpedoed the defense. So, like, again, it's interesting that Gorge is predictably seeing what we're saying, because that was it.
Yeah,
it was 100% it. The turnovers led to what was going on. But to answer your question, Adam, Daniels has performed better than I expected. I'm impressed with what I'm seeing from him as his career starts to develop.
Yeah.
Marc, what did you love to see from Dyson Daniels, and how does that contrast with what you saw from Josh Giddey tonight?
Yeah, I would really hesitate to pit them against each other because they're very, very different. And Dyson's role, he's moving up to the top level, the apex level of that role.
Can't blame you for trying, though, right?
yeah, sure. Clickbait it. Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, he's been incredible in that role, and I think he's going to play the exact same role in Atlanta, and I think he's going to be in Atlanta what they really hoped DeJounte Murray would have been. He's going to be an incredible safety blanket for Trae Young defensively. He's going to not need the ball in his hands. He's going to be able to get it from an advantage and make plays quickly, not stick on it. Same things he's doing here, be able to shoot when in the read is a dare you shot, be able to attack when the closeout is out of control and he needs to attack, run the floor, get into open space, make the right play. His role is a lot more simple than Giddey. Like it's not pitting them against each other, and it's also not sugarcoating it. Dyson isn't reinventing the wheel here. He's making incredibly great reads. But they're very simple actions, and he's playing from somebody else's advantage. What Giddey is being asked to do is much more complicated. It's much more difficult. You need somebody to be able to do it, and it's not a given that every team is going to have somebody that's good at it. And Josh has a chance to get there. He's creative. He sees the floor well. He understands how defensive rotations move. He's a step ahead of each play. He can get a little aggressive with trying to fit passes in. He can really start pushing the limit, and you want somebody that's in that role to be confident. You want them to throw passes like he threw the first play of the game behind somebody's head for a layup for 2 free throws that they, ironically missed. But you need that guy to be able to see everything happening and create easy actions and drive the machine and move it forward. So I'd struggle to pit them against each other, but you need Josh to be better at his role. His role is the most vital one. It's the one that drives the whole machine forward. It's the one that makes everything possible for the other roles to be simple. And you got to have him with a little bit less aggressiveness on the passes to keep them locked in defensively as a unit. You can't just have it be jailbreak situations all the time.
We could be facing the end of an era tonight, depending on how this Canada-Spain game goes, because it's as simple as this. If Canada beats Spain, then Australia will make the quarterfinals, albeit in one of the last 2 seeds as one of the best placed third place teams in the Olympics. So they will draw a USA or a Germany, one of those sorts of outfits in the quarterfinals, which I think we can probably predict how that will go based on the last couple of games. But if Spain beat Canada, then Australia finished last in the group and they are out. And that is it. Paddy Mills' Olympic career is over. Joe Ingles' Olympic career is over. Matthew Dellavedova's Olympic career is likely over. Brian Goorjian's Olympic career is likely over. It is an end of an era situation, whether it be this game or potentially the quarterfinal. That is a real reality that we're facing, Ben, which it pretty much puts an end point on the last 20 years of Australian basketball and an era that got us a bronze medal. And all of those players can be incredibly proud of, but we are facing the basketball mortality of this age of Australian players. And I'm seeing a lot of comments about guys that we're going to see potentially in LA in 4 years. But it's a weird time. It's a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach, seeing a lot of these guys that I've, grown up with over the last 20 years or so, right off into the sunset in the Olympics. It feels weird.
Yeah, it's a popular word in the US at the moment. But it was always going to happen, right, Adam? That the end of this tournament, whatever that looked like, was going to be the end of an era. And again, I don't know what your guys' expectations were of this team entering this tournament, but I thought if things went perfectly, then maybe we could pinch a bronze medal again. But us being in that 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th place in the world was kind of what I expected. And again, that's pretty much where we're going to end up. That, we haven't performed that well, but we're not talking about a horrible team here. It's still a top 10 team in the world.
Yeah.
That's coming to the end of a life cycle. And again, like any sporting team across any sport, the last phase of going around is usually not as successful as the period that came before it. And there will be time to digest what it looks like going forward, because you're right, there's those 3 stalwarts that are going to be stepping away from the Boomers program. There's going to be a new head coach. And then you also look at players like Nick Kay, like he's going to be 4 years older when the next Olympics comes around, like a new coach with the NBA talent coming through. He's probably not going to be on this team again. So it really is going to be the end of an era. And I think, to be fair to them, they're 2 separate discussions, right? What is happening at this tournament and assessing that for what it is. And then when that ends, we can step back and celebrate what has been the greatest period of men's basketball in Australia ever, right? That's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but it really has been good. Like I was at the game in Melbourne in 2019 where we beat Team USA, the Olympic medal game 3 years ago, the World Cup semi-finals that we've played in and just lost. So it's been a hyper successful era that we'll definitely talk about. But the team, if they get through to the next round, which I still think Canada is going to win, I think Canada will beat Spain and will get through to the next round.
Yep.
And then if we do, I've just seen a tweet, it's either going to be France, Germany, or Serbia. And again, the Boomers can beat those teams on their day. Like that's the thing. If
100%.
they show up and clean up this stuff, they can win that game and get to a semi-final and have a chance to make me look a bit foolish and win that medal. But they've got to do it, and there's no more room for playing around now. It's obviously win or go home, and they're going to have some steep competition to get to where they want to get to.
Mark, after 2 losses, it feels like such a long bow to draw to say that it's possible that the Boomers could make a semi, but Ben's spot on.
It's just one game.
They're fully capable of beating Serbia or France, and Germany, the world champions, are going to be the toughest test out of all of those teams, but there is a possibility there, which is crazy to think about coming off those 2 losses.
Yeah, I honestly thought they were a much better team than what they're showing us coming into this. I thought they had shown really, really nice pockets of play. I thought they had shown an identity and a character, and I thought the things that they could clean up in the warm-up games were all correctable mistakes. They weren't at a deficit athletically. They weren't at a deficit in terms of schematics of how they play. They were just making careless and selfish plays. And to me, like that's all stuff that can be cleaned up. And you would hope when they get to a tournament like this, after the warm-up games, there's a self-awareness and a calm that comes over you of like, all right, we're playing for something bigger than ourselves. And these guys are all professional players. They know exactly what's at stake. And to me, I think that's been the most disappointing thing, because in the warm-ups, you could skate over it. Like they got wins, they got losses against teams that, the US, they probably didn't think they would beat, but they kind of got away with, playing selfish and careless at times with the turnovers. And then same thing with Spain, they got away with it. And then Canada, you could explain it away as like, oh, well, they're a favorite. You know, it was very easy to say Canada's a favorite. But this is clear. Like, this is a team that you should beat. This is a massive game to set yourself up with an easier road to get in the semifinal, and you shot yourself in the foot. And to me, when you're playing professional basketball, it's already hard enough. The guys on the other end get paid the exact same. Like, those are real players over there. It doesn't matter that they're EuroLeague players. Like, those are real guys. You can't shoot yourself in the foot. It doesn't matter what league you play in. Doesn't matter the level. If you turn the ball over, if you're selfish, if you're careless, if you don't play connected, if you don't know the warts you're trying to hide and what you're trying to get into, you're going to lose. And I think, to me, they've underperformed to what I saw in the buildup of what they're capable of, not only individually but collectively. And I think that's been disappointing to see.
Is it also that they're slower to adjust than you would like them to be? Is that an element of it? You know, you spoke about how they came out after halftime and made some really key adjustments, but can you make those earlier? Is it appropriate to expect that those are made earlier?
I don't think anything that they had to adjust to in the first half was something that needed to go into locker room. That's just like, if we haven't talked before of like, hey, Patty, you know what's not a good idea? You to dribble 10 times, then shoot. Like, if we haven't gotten to that adjustment where if we see it once, we could be like, hey, man, lock it up. Like, what are we doing here? Like, if we can't get to that before we get to halftime, you know, it's not about an empty corner pick and roll, or it's not about, hey, we need Landell and more of these actions so we can get him in the pocket. Good things are happening there. Like, we're in the last game of the pool with a chance to set yourself up with an easier road to potentially a podium game. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I think for mine, the adjustments, we can talk about like whether Nick Kay should have come off the bench and put another winger to the start. Like, some micro level adjustments might have helped, they might have not. But I think, Adam, it links back to what you said before about that Code Sports article that, again, I've heard what you guys have, that like Ingles was off the team, Thibault was on the team until last minute, and then the internal pressure came to change that. So I think the changes would have been reorienting what this looked like a month ago with Petty coming off the bench and having a different starting lineup. And that was the change, if you're going to make a change, that I think would have had a chance to be more successful than throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall now that you're this far into the tournament going a certain way, because I don't think there's really much that could have changed, bar a few players coming in and out. But to Mark's point, is right, the team just didn't play well. And fundamentally, it can be that simple, that there are certain things they could have done better, but that wouldn't have overcome the best players on the team not showing up in the first half and losing them the game.
And this isn't the first time we've seen any of this. Like, this isn't like, oh man, wow, this really snuck up and bit us today. Like, this is the same stuff over and over and over again. So
we've talked about it. As soon as it gets tough, as soon as, you know, things start to fall apart, you either double down on what makes you great, or you start to question it and you start to do other things. And they've started to do other things.
And we talked about the selection stuff, and we talked about Delhi, and I saw a clip earlier of the Spain game when there was the dust up and Delhi came together, and the second half of this game with Delhi, like, there is something to be said about, he knows exactly, he has self-awareness. He knows exactly what he's great at. He knows exactly what he needs to stay away from. And he also understands that in the macro sense for the team. And when he was out there, when he was a part of it, they got to the stuff they needed to get to. They stayed away from the stuff they needed to stay away from. And if they didn't, he was vocal about it. You could see him coaching them through it on the court. And you can tell me that he shouldn't be there or not be there, but every game I've watched, he has been the one, when he's played, that there is never a minute that they're playing with him that they're not leaning into exactly what they're good at and leaning out of exactly what they're bad at. And he has the juice to tell Patty, get off it. He has the juice to tell Patty, go set a back screen right here. We're in this. So to me, it's not, we didn't see anything that was a problem that we didn't know was already a problem. This wasn't something of, oh, we need to make this adjustment on a coverage or this or that. It's the exact same stuff over and over.
And at this point, Ben, it's such a do or die scenario that, you know, the players do have to take it upon themselves to be able to set themselves up for success. And, you know, to your point, Mark, stamp out the stuff that they don't want to see and stamp out the stuff that's not going to result in victories. And, you know, the Delhis, the Jocks, the Joes, they have to come together and they have to be really strong with their teammates in that locker room to say, this is how we win. This is how we lose. You can choose to do one of those two things, but the more likely scenario is this or that. Which one do you want more? I'm willing to bet it's a win. So do the things that get you a win.
The film session. Oh, I'm sorry. The film session, the next film session needs to be the most honest, the most straightforward, cards on the table. Like in professional film sessions, it's not just the coach talking. There is an open dialogue. You are allowed to speak. There's back and forth. The next film session needs to be cards on the table, pure honesty.
Yeah, and to your point, and it's not even about winning or losing, right? Because they played much better 3 nights ago against Canada than they did tonight. And that's frankly where this team is at, that they can play their best game. And if every other team plays their best game, they're probably not winning a medal. Like the talent around the world is getting to a point where it's at least level with the Boomers, not passing them. But to the theme of what we've been talking about, it's just being focused from the jump. That, again, we harp on the turnovers, we harp on the bad defense, the missed defensive rebounds, the bad shots, like all the stuff we saw. Like, I'm not saying that professional basketball is simple, but it sometimes can be that simple that if the best players aren't doing the small things right, you're not beating teams that have lesser talent than you, like the Greek team does, let alone going up against Serbia. If we're playing Jokic in 3 days, like, well, he's going to put up a 30-point triple-double if he's facing that team. Or if it's going up against Schroeder in Germany, he's going to be attacking relentlessly and getting the ball off the turnovers and running it down our throat. So, yeah, it really can be that simple. That the film comment of Marc is spot on, and that when they play the next game in a few days, cut down the turnovers and rebound the ball, and that 19-point hole becomes a 4-point hole, and then you can overcome that in the second half.
You know, people will tell you who they are, and over time, just consistency. And this team has told us who they are. They have spurts of being really good. They have spurts of playing together. They have spurts of getting to great actions. And they also have spurts of carelessness. They have spurts of selfishness. And those spurts of carelessness and selfishness, unfortunately, outweigh the other ones, because you can't afford to have 5-minute stretches like that in professional games that are 40 minutes long, because they just put you in too deep of a hole.
I want to ask about Nick Kay. Because Nick Kay was a big part of what we spoke about pre-tournament. There's a lot of comments about Nick Kay. There's a lot of comments about Duop Reith. We've already referenced Duop Reith in this episode and said that he's not the silver bullet, nor was he so far and away impressive enough in his 9 minutes tonight to say that he absolutely should start for this team and play, 25 minutes in the next contest should we make the quarterfinals. But Nick Kay hasn't been at his best the last 2 games. The lights have shone a little bit too bright for Nick Kay in those moments. And then we're seeing, as you say, in 4 years, Nick Kay will be well into his 30s. And this might be the last international tournament we see for Nick Kay. He can recapture it. He can still, contribute. But I think his form or lack thereof exacerbated by the turnovers, by, everyone having to play on their heels and, giving the other team easy baskets in these contests, because he's going to, shut down the half court offense, but there's not much that he can do when we're giving it away at half court.
Yeah, and I'm going to defend Nick Kay here because I don't think he's changed. He's the same person he's been.
Guy.
But he was defending Giannis Antetokounmpo one-on-one tonight. That's not going to work.
This roster can do that, right?
Yeah, but Nick Kay isn't the best position person on that roster for mine. So again, I'm not saying throwing Dyson on him for 30 minutes is going to win us the game, but I think it's suboptimal for Nick Kay. So I don't think Nick Kay is doing anything different to what he's done the last 5 years. Yes, his shot's not going in. He might not be scoring as much, but that's not Nick Kay. He does the 1%ers, the little things.
How he adds value.
Yeah, and he might be 5 to 10% less than being at his best, but he could be his MVP self, and Giannis is still going to run past him because that's who Giannis is, and that's no insult to Nick Kay. So
no.
I think the criticism for Kay is unwarranted in the sense that, like Marc said before about Paddy, that's on the team and the coaching staff. It's not on Nick Kay because he is doing what he's been doing, and he is just overmatched, and that's not his fault.
I thought he did well in the half court. Like Giannis got a lot of early ones out in transition, picked up fouls off live ball turnovers. He hit a walk-up dribble 3. Like, okay, like you give him that shot. But in general, I thought
Yeah.
Kay did a pretty good job. It's not like Giannis was just tearing them apart in the half court. There was some timely shooting from Greece. Like they built a wall. They helped off the wrong guy there late. There's two guys that you probably don't want to help off of on Greece, Papa Nikolaos and number 7. I don't know his last name, but those are the two guys you don't want to help first pass away from. And that was a down to, they were in it. And that was a big bucket. First pass away. I don't know if it was Patty or Dyson or Exum who came in from the right side off the Boomers bench, but that was a huge bucket. And I think that one down to Giannis isolated at the nail a step above it. I think you got to play that one out and just say if he hits a jumper, great. If he doesn't, no problem. But that's not the guy to help off of.
Yeah.
Apologies to Vasilius Toliopoulos as well,
Yes.
number 7.
I saw that name. I wasn't even going to try. But I think, again, with Kay, like 5 years ago, he could operate at the elbow and Paddy Mills and the motion offense worked because Paddy was coming off screens and hitting shots. And then Nick Kay's skill set gets amplified. But when the team around him isn't possible of that, he looks more like a plodding roll man, big man. But it's the same guy. He just doesn't have the sophistication and the shot making around him to pop. I'm sure if you put Nick Kay on Canada's team and saw all the guards zipping around, Nick Kay would look like he did 4 years ago, if not looking better, because he can set up guys that are going to make the shots.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that almost brings us to the end of the stream. We've got over 100 people that have stuck with us the whole way and a whole bunch of comments. It is very early in the morning now on Saturday morning, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Going to end with this comment, which just tickled me. Replace Gorge with Ben Simmons as coach. It might trick him. That's comment of the day, James. We appreciate you.
Thanks, James.
Make sure you head to pickandroll.com.au, subscribe, read all of Ben's words, Marc's words, listen to my rabbiting, waffling on a little exclusive for everyone as we end this episode. Taped an interview with Indiana Pacer Johnny Furphy today that will run next week on our other podcast, Unwrapped. So please like and subscribe to Unwrapped on Apple, Spotify. Like and subscribe to the Podium Pod across YouTube, Apple, and Spotify as well. You can go to lowmanhelp.substack.com for Marc's words. So you can see Marc break down a whole bunch of NBA stuff. He had a great Anthony Edwards breakdown. Looking forward to bothering you all season long about more Pacers content this upcoming season, Marc. And you can, of course, read Ben Mallis's words on pickandroll.com.au. Gentlemen, firstly to Marc, if this is the last one, then we do have to do a post-mortem, but hopefully there's at least one more post-game to come.
Yes. Hopefully one more. Hopefully we get to see self-awareness projected onto the court next game, and we get to see some form of this is who we are as the Boomers.
Ben, this is eerily like the Podium Pod last year. Maybe we should quit doing these while the team plays really poorly. Maybe we're the problem.
Well, I think I'm the problem, Adam. I've gate crashed your bromance, and look what's happening here. So don't hold it against me if you don't get another podcast with Marc.
You were not a third wheel unless we were a tricycle. Thank you so much for all of your patronage and tuning in tonight. We are the Podium Pod, and we'll see you again next time.